episode 39, and this week we look at Genius Yield as well as a whole bunch of updates in the Cardano ecosystem. Hey, and welcome to another episode of the Learn Cardano podcast, the podcast where we break down all the ins and outs of Cardano so that Crypto Granny can understand every single thing that I'm talking about. That's right, I've got a fan on YouTube named Crypto Granny, and she listens in on all the episodes there and is so thankful that I can actually break down all the technical concepts in a way that she can understand. That is the goal of this podcast. That is the goal of the YouTube channel. And so far, maybe I am kicking those goals. All right. So this episode, I have a whole bunch of news updates. It has been a little while since I've done a podcast episode, and it is because it takes so much longer to actually produce these podcast episodes. It does get a little bit more attention, so I'm trying to maximize my time and get as much reach as possible. So that's why it's getting a little bit more attention at the moment, but I promise I will get back into the swing of things on the podcast, and we'll produce more and more content, more unique content, specifically for audio listeners. Okay. So this week I have a whole bunch of news updates. So much has happened. It's absolutely incredible. The Sunday Swap ISO has ended. The Adana is starting their own ISO. There's a whole bunch of other projects that are doing ISPOs as well. It's just so active in terms of fundraising and awareness building of various projects. And I did an absolutely huge marathon of DEX interviews. I did one with MetaDex. I did one with ADA Finance and Genius Yield. And I also interviewed Raymond Matter, who is a stake pool operator that ran a Sunday Scooper pool. And I talked to him about his experience and what it was like as well. So a whole lot of interviews. If you haven't seen them yet, please check them out on YouTube. But let's get into the news for this week. Now, because it's been so long since I've done a news update, I want to backtrack about a week or two from today and go through some of these updates that these DEXs are having at the moment. So the first one I would like to talk about is Cardax. They have released a visual demo, a video of their DEX and how it works at the moment. So you can have a look at the interface, how sexy it is, how cool it's looking, and it's not quite ready yet for testnet. So I don't think they've launched anything yet from what I've seen with the updates. You can't get your hands on it just yet, but I believe they are very close. They're going through audits and everything else. So they should be releasing something on testnet where you can get your hands on it and experience what their testnet will be like. The next project I'd like to talk about is Vi Finance, an absolutely fantastic project that I've been following since day one. And they have finally announced who their development partner is, and that's Imagine AI. They finally have put out a release. They've updated all the information around it. It was kind of secretive for a while, and this is because of regulations in the United States, and because of that, the company would have changed tack and maybe positioned themselves somewhere else. I'm not sure how they'll get around those things, but that was why that announcement had been made earlier. But it's finally good to see the actual developers that are powering and writing all of the code for Vi Finance. They're just a bunch of PhDs that know functional programming really well. It kind of helps, especially when you're building out a DEX and a whole DeFi solution such as ViFi are doing. So that's really cool. That's absolutely fantastic. It's really good to see that concrete partnership there as well for them. One of these other projects that have gone under the radar for a lot of people is Aneta BTC. This is a wrapped BTC or wrapped Bitcoin that is available on Ergo and Cardano. So it's a multi-chain asset that you'll be able to use your Bitcoin, if you're holding any Bitcoin, and then convert it into a synthetic version on Cardano or Ergo. So it's pretty cool in regards to how that can happen. And it will create that cross-chain bridge and interoperability between those two chains, because you can bring in value from Bitcoin over to Cardano and use it in the DeFi space there. So that's really cool. So Aneta at the moment are running a LISO, or Liquidity Initial Stake offering. And this is a way for them to get some extra liquidity into the ecosystem. And they're providing this liquidity for 3 different dexes. One of them is MinSwap, one of them is ErgoDex, and the last one is KayaSwap. I think it's KayaSwap. I think that's how you pronounce it. Now, once you have this liquidity and these CNETA tokens that you get, you'll be able to use those on their dexes that they're partnering with to provide liquidity, do swaps, whatever you want to do. Now, this LISO is very similar to what Meld did. So if you aren't familiar with that, it's basically stake pools that they've set up where you can delegate your ADA, and then in exchange of your ADA rewards, you get these CNETA tokens. So you are technically paying for them with your rewards, but in terms of giving up your initial investment, that doesn't happen, and that's pretty cool. So you're just giving up those extra rewards that you would have gotten if you were staking to a regular stake pool and getting the CNETA tokens instead. So it's a very safe way and very low risk way of earning those particular tokens. So it's pretty cool. I like it. And check out the project. Of course, all the links in the show notes for you. ADEX Pro is one project that I interviewed, I think, well over 6 months ago. They did their launch as a little bit shaky. A lot of people weren't expecting what they delivered, but they've taken in feedback. They've gone back and did reiterations of the design and extra integrations with other wallets. So now they've released version 1.1 and their DEX is looking a little bit better. If you haven't checked it out yet, at least have a look at it and see what you think. ADEX Pro have been working tirelessly on trying to create this decentralized exchange on Cardano. It's quite a learning curve for a lot of people that are doing anything related to DeFi on Cardano, and they're doing okay. They're provided and met their goals and committed to delivering what they promised throughout the ecosystem. So check out ADEX Pro if you haven't yet. NFT Maker are making great strides in the ecosystem for NFTs. Usually when you're storing an NFT, you're using the IPFS servers and using a server such as Pinata to put up your shiny JPEGs, PNGs, whatever it is. NFT Maker recently announced that they're using Filecoin to actually store all their IPFS images. They've now stored over 500,000 NFTs on that particular network and are now looking at running their own Filecoin nodes. That's really cool. They're supporting their own decentralized network for their file storage of their NFTs. So it's a good approach and I commend NFT Maker for it. If you haven't checked out NFT Maker yet, please do if you're trying to make your own NFT project. They also have released their own white paper for the NMaker token. So check that out. I haven't had a deep look into it yet, but I will be diving deeper into it very, very soon. The team from NFT Maker are also pushing out the CNFT Awards. This is an award ceremony for all the NFT projects in the Cardano ecosystem. It's pretty cool. They've been going through the process of getting submissions for the award ceremony, filtering out those particular projects. They've gone through the voting stage and now they're doing the big count and finding out how many counts they've gotten for all these particular nominations for the different categories that they got. And they're doing a big award ceremony on February 19th, where you can find out what projects, what NFT projects have won these particular awards for these categories within the Cardano ecosystem. Pretty cool. It's something to celebrate. It's a milestone for Cardano. So check that out. Links again in the show notes for you. Wing Riders is a project that I've been following for a little while now. As soon as they launched on testnet, I had to try it out. Their seamless integration with their wallet and the DEX itself just made the whole experience really nice. And you can tell that they've been doing this for a long time. So the team from Wing Riders is actually powered by Vacuum Labs, and they've had a long history in the Cardano ecosystem. I did an interview with the project lead from NewFi that talks all about their wallet, and he's from Vacuum Labs. Please check it out. It's a really good interview, really good insight into what NewFi is trying to achieve. But Wing Riders are going through a seed funding round, and they've managed to raise $4.5 million for the development of their DEX. But from the look of it, they've already built out their DEX quite well. So they're using this extra income and revenue to do other things, whether it's marketing, whether it's building up liquidity on their DEX, whatever it might be. I don't know yet. The details aren't very clear, but it's clear that Wing Riders is making big moves in this ecosystem to actually make a huge impact within the Cardano ecosystem with their DEX. Definitely a project that you should look out for. I do know and have heard that they are looking at token sales and token raises for their DEX, for their wallet, whatever it might be as well. So it's another opportunity that you may want to look into in regards to what they're doing and ride it to the moon, as they say. Check it out. It's an awesome project. I absolutely love what the team at Vacuum Labs are doing for NuFi and for Wing Riders itself. Milkometer have been making strides in the development space on their sidechain. It's launched on testnet. There are a lot of people that are using it at the moment. I unfortunately haven't had a chance to get on it. I don't think I made it through the whitelist for testing it at the moment. But Milkometer is a sidechain that will run in parallel to Cardano, and any developer that has built something on Solana or even Ethereum using Solidity can port their app over to Milkometer and run it there natively. So it's a really cool way of bringing in extra developers from different ecosystems that may be fed up with Solana shutting down their network every once in a while, or even those gas fees on Ethereum, which make DeFi almost impossible. Those projects can now port their projects onto Milkometer and run their dApps there and run it in a language that they're used to, Solidity. So they don't need to learn a whole brand new language. But of course, if you want to make it interact with Cardano, you do need to know a little bit of Haskell. But that's where their teams can come into play and build those particular bridges to link Milkometer to Cardano and run really cool DeFi projects on those side chains and interact with Cardano for very, very low fees. So this is something, it's quite a big thing. It's quite a big deal. And if the projects that are coming over pull it off, run on Milkometer and integrate in with Cardano easily and flawlessly, then we're going to see a lot of uptake in the Cardano ecosystem, because all these extra developers that were looking at learning Haskell but then just looked at and went, nah, I don't think so. They can finally just come over and port their projects into Milkometer, and hey presto, there they go. Well, I made it sound really easy. It's not that easy, not as easy as that, but experienced developers will be able to do it. So I'm really looking forward to this. Milkometer is a huge aspect of the Cardano ecosystem, and DC Spark have been making big strides in there. They've also relaunched their own wallet called Flint Wallet, which will work on multi-chains. So it will work on their sidechain, will work on Solana, and also work on any EVM chain, as well as Cardano. So that's the brilliant thing about it. So you can start buying NFTs or having assets on either of these chains, and hopefully we'll see the interaction between all of them. So I'll be able to trade and move things between those different chains, especially if you need to move things between the EVM chain on Milkometer back to Cardano or vice versa. So I'm assuming that's how it's going to work. Like I said, I haven't had to play around with testnet yet, but fingers crossed I do, and I can explain exactly how that all works to you all. MinSwap have finally gone through their final audit with Twig. Twig is an auditing and security company, and they've been looking at the MinSwap code and have given them the tick of approval. Security audit done. We will soon be seeing the swapping capabilities and some of those really cool features that I demoed in one of my YouTube videos of how MinSwap works. Absolutely love the DEX. The little hidden cookies in there as well just make that experience pleasurable. I've said in other podcasts and other videos that the finance experience should be plain, simple, and boring, and you get it over and done with really quickly. Well, I think I was wrong. Now that I've used the MinSwap DEX, I've experienced that little bit of joy. Yeah, I know, joy when interacting with finance. Those little things like the cat purring in the background, the ability to put in a single liquidity and it will split and divide it and make the trading pairs for me in a liquidity pool just makes that experience so much easier and painless. And that was a big thing, painless to go through. So I didn't have to think about things. There was nothing complex about it. I just wanted to put in ADA and swap it for something else, or provide in ADA for a particular liquidity pool, and it will do the swap and trade for me there in a quick, easy process. Absolutely love MinSwap at the moment, and I can't wait to see them on mainnet. Congratulations, MinSwap team, for making it through the security audit. They've also gone through a whole testing phase with the community as well. So we're going to see that fall into place and see what comes out of it. Fingers crossed they launch really soon. I really want to see another DEX and really interact with another DeFi protocol. So I'm really looking forward to MinSwap. Now, the last news update is with Genius Yield. They released their white paper about 2 weeks ago now, and it is pretty good. It goes through all the details of how that DEX is going to be built out, some of the really cool features. And I did an interview with the CTO, Dr. Lars Brunjes, and the marketing manager, Bartosz Antoniak, and they both give me a really good rundown about Genius Yield as well as the entire Genius Yield ecosystem with their platform called Genius X, which is an incubator program for a lot of projects that are building on Cardano. So that's really cool. So since we're on this topic, let's get into this interview with Genius Yield.
My name is Bartosz Antoniak. I'm marketing manager at Genius Yield. I got into crypto over 3 years ago already when I joined one of the blockchain analytics companies. And it was actually an eye-opening experience for me that showed me an amazing potential of that can be unblocked by a blockchain technology and also by cryptocurrencies as such. And also the idea of decentralized finance, like getting rid of all these middlemen and replacing them basically with smart contracts is something that really appeals to me. And this is basically why and how I joined Genius Yield, because I love the idea of simplifying DeFi, making it accessible and unlocking its potential to the mass audience, mass customers.
My name is Lars Brunjes. I'm a mathematician and software developer and educator, and I'm in crypto for a bit more than 5 years now. And it was actually not my interest in crypto in the first place that got me there. It was my interest in Haskell, which is the programming language that IOHK uses for Cardano, the Cardano blockchain. IOHK is the engineering company that builds Cardano. So I spent a lot of time at university doing research and teaching, and then joined a mainstream software company that used like mainstream technologies, C#.NET. But it's always been my hobby since my teens to learn programming languages, and interesting ones or exotic ones. Functional programming and Haskell in particular have always interested me. And at some point I got bored in my previous job and then was looking for Haskell positions, and IOHK was looking for Haskell developers. So I got that, and that's how I entered into crypto. And then there was a teaching opportunity, and I've always enjoyed teaching. And so I jumped on that and taught a couple of Haskell classes all over the world, and then became director of education for IOHK. And in the last year, I've spent a lot of time teaching thousands of people Plutus, which is the smart contract language that IOHK uses, that Cardano uses. And that's the connection to Genius Yield, because then the founder of Genius Yield approached me and asked me whether I would be interested to become their CTO to put that theoretical Plutus knowledge to practical use, which I think is a very interesting opportunity. So that's why I'm here today.
And I had the pleasure of following along with the Plutus Pioneer program as well last year and learning how to program smart contracts on Plutus. So that was an absolute pleasure to follow along. So in regards to Genius Yield, what exactly is Genius Yield? Can we get that 30-second elevator pitch and how it differs from other DEXs in the ecosystem in general?
Yes. So the DEX part, so Genius Yield is first of all a DEX. And I mean, there are like nice features that we have that others may not have, but that is not the main difference. So the main difference is the yield part that's on top of the DEX, a yield optimizer that will allow liquidity providers to optimize the yield they can achieve or make with our DEX.
Okay. So for the people that are providing the liquidity, then how does the yield optimizer work on Genius Yield?
Right. So when you provide liquidity, you have a couple of choices to make. For example, which pools to set up, which pairs of tokens you want to offer. And then there are other like sliders you can slide. For example, what amount of tokens in each pool that you create and what price you set for your pools. And so there are lots of like options that you have as a liquidity provider. And the idea of this automatic yield optimization is that these decisions, you can delegate these decisions to the automatic yield optimizer that will try to find optimal values for all these choices, or make optimal decisions to make your liquidity work for you as hard as possible, as efficient as possible.
Okay, so I'm trying to visualize that. So, one, you said the user has to choose which liquidity pairs they want to put things into, but then you said like a range as well. So I'm trying to better understand exactly how that would actually, the user experience that someone would go through when using the DEX and providing liquidity. So if I provide, for example, just ADA, does the DEX choose another pair that it would match up to as well as price? Or is it purely just one of those options that the yield optimizer is doing for me?
First of all, there are two types of users. And I think the default user doesn't have to worry about any of that. I mean, the normal use case for using a DEX is just you have some tokens A and you want to swap them for a token B. And that will be very simple and intuitive, and you don't have to worry about any of that. And that's the side of the so-called market takers. But in order for that to work, in order for people to actually be able to do these swaps, there must be liquidity. So if I want to swap A against B, then there must be B. Otherwise, I mean, my B must come from somewhere. And that's where the so-called market makers come in that provide this liquidity. So they have a different angle. The users just want to, for whatever reason, swap one token against the other. And these market makers are not primarily interested in swapping. They want to earn income or yield, like it's an investment where they want to profit from the fees that the other users have to pay when they do swaps. And for those, I mean, the yield optimization part is for the second group of users that have money, liquidity available and want to put it into a DEX to facilitate swapping for the normal users. And there, I mean, you have these choices that I mentioned earlier. I mean, if I have a bunch of ADA and want to do this, then, what tokens do I buy? And what pools do I set up? Do I just set up one pool or several pools? Which tokens do I put into those pools? And I mean, that what I said until now is true for all DEXs. And then for Genius Yield, on top of that is this, it goes under the phrase concentrated liquidity. And that has to do with, I mean, the pioneer, I think, of DEXs was Uniswap on Ethereum. And the version 2 of Uniswap had this beautifully simple model of a pool where you don't have to say anything about prices. The prices fall out automatically. So it's this so-called constant product formula. So you just have an amount of A's and B's in a pool and you multiply those two amounts and you get a number. And the rule is just that this product must always stay constant. So if you take some A's out, then you must put B's in such that the product is the same as it was before. Right. And that has this nice effect that it behaves somewhat as you would expect from prices. So the more the one token, I mean, the more people take out A's, for example, the more expensive it gets in terms of B's. So as one would expect with supply and demand. So this all falls out automatically, this beautifully elegant and simple constant product formula. But the drawback is that and I should say that this constant product formula supports basically an infinite price range. So if you have your tokens A and B, the exchange rate between those two can be anything from basically 0 to basically infinity. So it supports the whole range. But in reality, often with a given pair of tokens, the price won't fluctuate that much. I mean, it will normally stay in a certain range. And that has the effect that in Uniswap version 2, most of the liquidity in a pool will never be used, never be exercised. So as long as the actual exchange rate stays in a specific range, the liquidity will shift a bit between, the ratio between A and B in the pool, but never to extremes. And that has the effect that you put a lot of liquidity in, but basically you earn rewards or earn fees on swaps only for a small part of liquidity that basically contributes to this range where the price actually falls in. And that is a problem because people don't get as much yield for their liquidity as they should or as they expect. So then Uniswap came up with version 3 of their protocol, where they added this feature, so-called concentrated liquidity, where in addition to just specifying the 2 tokens in the pool, you also have to specify a price range. And then as long as the actual price stays inside this range, basically all the liquidity is concentrated in this range, and you can earn much more fees with the same amount of liquidity than you would in a classical version 2 Uniswap pool. So that's that. And so that's actually a good feature. It allows liquidity providers to gain much higher yields. But the disadvantage is that now it gets more complicated because now in addition to just picking the 2 tokens, you also have to pick an appropriate price range. And Genius Yield also wants to use this idea of concentrated liquidity. It works technically completely different to Ethereum. That's due to the nature of the underlying blockchains, which are completely different. But the idea or the effect should be the same, that you can concentrate as a liquidity provider, you can concentrate your liquidity in a price range. But then, as I said, you have more choices to make. What price range do I choose? And of course, prices are dynamic, so they can shift over time. So you should also, there's not the optimal price range. That depends on time. So as time passes, that shifts, and you should move your liquidity to a different price range, which makes something like our yield optimizer even more desirable or even more necessary. I think with Uniswap, they made the experience that even though in principle version 3 was much more efficient and promising for liquidity providers, it didn't really have the effect that they wanted because it was so demanding on the liquidity providers. In principle, they would have to stay up at night and watch the prices move and then permanently shift their liquidity. So it's very nice if you have an automatic tool that does that for you. And that's where Genius Yield's yield optimizer comes in.
Wow, fantastic. Okay, so now I understand how that automation part falls into place. So in the end, the fees that are coming through the DEX is where the yield comes into place and where people are benefiting from. Is that correct?
Yes, basically every person that makes a swap using your pool has to pay a certain fee. Yes, so each time, whatever. We want to make it customizable, so the pool, the liquidity providers can set the fee. I think on Uniswap it's constant, something like 0.3%, if I'm not mistaken. But so that means in Uniswap, if you swap 1,000 ADA against USDT, then first of all, basically 0.3% are subtracted from your 1,000 ADA, and then you are left with 997 ADA, and then only those are swapped against USDT. And the 3 ADA in this example would be fee for the liquidity provider. And it's similar to, with Genius Yield, yes. So each time somebody makes use of your pool, a certain percentage basically goes to the pool operator or pool owner. It stays actually in the pool. That's also same as in Uniswap. So, obviously the owner can take it out if he so chooses, but by default, it will still stay in the pool. So over time, basically the liquidity in the pool grows and grows and grows, the more the pool is used. So it compounds.
Okay. So there's a bunch of other terms that are thrown around with Genius Yield as well. So if you're going through the white paper, the website, etc., you see this other term called smart swaps. Can you explain exactly what a smart swap is within Genius Yield?
Maybe not exactly, but I'll give it a try. So the idea is that there are lots of types of orders that you can think of. I mean, it starts with simple market orders, and then you have limit orders. And then you can think of all sorts of more complicated setups where it's maybe linked to a deadline or a time. I mean, maybe you want to sell at a certain price, but only before a specific date, or maybe before the date you want to do something different than after the date. And so all sorts of conditions. And our idea is to basically make that scriptable. So have a simple scripting language similar to Marlow on Cardano, to allow it to basically customize or make it completely programmable and customizable how your order should behave, so that then you can implement strategies as complicated as you like. You can say, okay, fine, if the price goes below 100 until next Wednesday, then sell half, use half, and otherwise do this and at that price and so on. So that's this idea of the smart swaps, that's basically programmable orders.
That's really cool. So essentially, I could come in on the DEX and say, I want to buy 100 worth of ADA at X price if it drops in price, for example. So I can do the dollar cost averaging and put in those orders and automate that process. Is that correct? Pretty much like a centralized exchange.
Yes, that's correct. Yes, that's the idea. Of course, it will be a process. In the beginning, we will just have simple orders and then work on this feature to make it more flexible. But yeah, that's the idea. Exactly.
That's really cool. I don't know if that exists anywhere else on other exchanges or decentralized exchanges in the ecosystem.
I do believe that, I don't know about other blockchains, but I do believe that Maladex, for example, on Cardano, they also talk about smart swaps. So they have similar ideas. But yeah, I also believe it's very cool if you can pull it off. And yes, I think it's relatively unique.
Yes, unique because of Cardano's UTX model and being able to actually program that in, have the order book model, which is very, very exciting in general. So there's other terms that are thrown around on the white paper, etc., and one of them is a smart liquidity vault. Can you go through exactly what a smart liquidity vault is?
Right. So we talked a lot already about this automatic yield optimization, and basically the yield optimizer could be compared to like portfolio manager in traditional finance. So somebody that manages your funds for you. And normally the way it works is you put you want to invest a certain amount of US dollar, you put it in, portfolio, and then the portfolio manager buys and sells for you on your behalf, and hopefully optimal. And this yield optimizer is very similar. So the yield optimizer is basically the portfolio manager, and the vault is the portfolio. So you put the money you want to invest into this vault, and then that is what the yield optimizer has access to, and where he then uses the funds in this vault to set up the pools at price ranges as we discussed before. So it's basically the place where you put your stuff. If you don't want to do it manually, obviously you also have the option to not use the automatic yield optimizer and do everything manually and set your own pools up and price ranges. But if you don't want to and want to leave that to our yield optimizer, then you place your liquidity into this vault, and then it's under the control of the automatic yield optimizer.
So I'm assuming this is where the AI would fall into place and do all the smarts for you. It's basically, do you want the AI to do it, or do you want to be a day trader on the DEX? And I know from my point of view, I'm a terrible day trader. I'm glad I got out of that. I've lost more money than I would like to admit. So is that where the AI aspects come into play?
Yes, mostly, definitely, exactly. So the idea is that we train AIs that then learn these, good strategies to manage your funds. Yes, that's exactly the idea.
Okay. And there's something else on the roadmap that I saw coming up in the future. So we'll get into that a little bit later as well. But there's also this lovely feature of having your own wallet, a Genius Yield wallet. I know we're so spoilt for choice in the Cardano ecosystem with different wallets, but the wallet has a fiat on-ramp and off-ramp as well. So how does, and why do we need another wallet to use Genius Yield? And what's the idea behind the fiat on-ramp and off-ramp?
We probably wouldn't need another wallet, but mean, as you said yourself, DeFi is quite complicated and a lot of people don't really understand it. So one of our ideas is to make it as easy as possible, in particular for newcomers. And I mean, one aspect of that will be our so-called Genius Academy, where we offer courses on ranging from general topics like blockchain and crypto and DeFi to more specific things regarding Genius Yield. So that's one aspect. But we also want to make the UI and the whole experience as intuitive as possible. Of course, one stumbling block for people that are new to crypto is how to get their US dollar or euro into crypto in the first place. So our idea is just to make it easier, in particular for newcomers, to have a wallet that makes that easy. In principle, they just put the USD or the euro in and don't have to worry about first learning about how exchanges work, for example. But of course, you are absolutely right that it's this like these two philosophies that you also find in the computing world. I mean, like Windows versus Linux, and Linux there's this, or in Unix there's this motto that the program should do only one thing but do it well. So you have all these little tools that are specialized to one thing, and then you can combine them. And on the other hand, you have your typical Windows users where Excel, for example, can run a whole company and can basically make coffee and write emails, and so everything from one thing. And so basically, I think, especially for beginners, maybe this Windows concept is easier. They open one tool and then they can do everything they want from this one thing. And that's where the Genius wallet comes in. But nevertheless, of course, you don't have to make use of that. You can also, get your funds from elsewhere, from your favorite wallet. And
well, that's probably the end goal for any DeFi protocol, to be able to provide that seamless user experience where I can give it to my mother and she can load in $100 or 100 AUD into the wallet and let the DEX and the automatic yield optimizer, the AI, to do everything for her. So she doesn't need to learn about impermanent loss, the risks that are involved in using a DEX in general, or understanding what these pairs are. The whole ecosystem of the wallet would do it for you.
Exactly. Right. Exactly.
Right. Okay.
Although, of course, this impermanent loss thing you mentioned is, of course, more on the side of the liquidity provider, right? I mean, normal users don't have to worry about that anyway. If your mother or my father just want to swap, then that's easy anyway. But yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, we want to make it as easy as possible for people without all these scary terms that they have to learn about first.
And if you pull that off, that'd be absolutely amazing. So if you can get to that point where the user experience is so seamless and you can do that, I think you're in for a very exciting and very good product. So fingers crossed, fingers and toes all crossed. So you also mentioned the academy, the Genius Yield Academy, that you're piecing together to try and educate and teach people about how all these aspects are going to work. What is that going to look like? Is it a bunch of courses that are going to be pieced together to teach people about DeFi in general?
Yes. I mean, as I said before, definitely we want to have general courses. I mean, maybe as general as cryptography or blockchain or consensus protocols, DeFi, DEXs, and so on. But also maybe, more hands-on, just how to use Genius Yield or how to do a swap. I mean, I envision a complete range from the more general and theoretical to hands-on, like specific things. Yes, that's the idea, to have these courses.
Just on a side note, how can you balance your work with IOHK and also being a CTO of a brand new company as well? Where do you find the time to actually do all these things? Like you're constantly, teaching everyone how to use Plutus. So, your time is very hands-on there. But how on earth can you also be the CTO of another company?
You better don't need much sleep. Yeah, I mean, Laurent from the beginning was very understanding. And he was aware of the fact that IHK is important to me and that I love teaching and I don't want to give that up. So, he was okay with me doing it like part-time. And of course, it's a lot of work, obviously. And I do get as much sleep as I'd like. But so far it's fine. And somehow manage. But yeah, you're right. It's of course quite tough. Yeah. But I enjoy everything. I enjoy the teaching very much that I do for IHK, and I love programming. So at least it's a lot of fun, both of it, which helps, obviously.
Okay.
If you enjoy what you're doing.
I definitely enjoy everything around Cardano and the crypto space, but my hair is starting to thin and I'm going a little bit grey in places. So it's definitely having an effect on me. So I'm surprised that you can keep it up, but whatever you're doing.
My wife claims that 2 years ago there was not a single grey hair on my head.
Maybe we can look back at the lecture videos and see your hair color change over time. Maybe I should do that and have a look. So in terms of timescales, since we're talking about time in general, what does the delivery of the DEX look like? I saw on the roadmap that it's possibly being on testnet in Q1 of 2022. Is that realistic? Is that what we're going to see?
Well, I have tried it on testnet. So the core DEX is actually very simple. There are like 3 smart contracts involved. And so we do have we haven't like publicly demoed that yet, but we do have something working on the testnet already. So you can like in a toy UI create orders and set up pools and swap and so on. So yes, I think that's realistic that in Q1 we have a public demo on the testnet, and then I believe for launch on mainnet we set Q2, so that will then be a couple of months after that, because obviously you want to be very sure that you have tested everything thoroughly and thought of as much potential problems as possible so that they don't arise in the first place. But yeah, we do have something already and we do try stuff on the testnet, so it's certainly realistic.
That's really exciting. I didn't realize that you guys were so far ahead and actually almost ready to fully launch on mainnet. That's really exciting to see what comes out in 2022. So in terms of scaling and making the DEX as flexible, not flexible, but scaled as much as possible, what are you guys doing to make that possible? So we're seeing on like Sunday Swap, they're using their scoopers, MinSwap, they're using laminars. We got agents on Wing Riders. Well, how are you guys scaling the DEX? Are you using like something very similar, or using L2 solutions on Cardano? What's the idea behind that?
In principle, it's similar, and I think that Cardano is ideally suited for scalability if you get your models right. So you can't just take. I mentioned this Uniswap I did for the course earlier, and there I basically just one-to-one translated the Ethereum solution, and that would be horrible to. It's just a teaching example, of course, but it would be horrible to do that in practice, and it wouldn't scale at all. The reason is that you can't just take something from a completely different programming model and plant it to Cardano and expect that it will perform. So you have to acknowledge that it's everything works differently, and you have to adjust accordingly. And so, then you end up along similar lines to Sunday Swap, for example. So you don't have your monolithic pools, but everything is spread over, the whole state of the system is spread over as many UTXOs as possible. And you have these agents or scoopers or whatever you call them to collect as many orders as possible and bulk process them. So in that sense, it's quite similar. Obviously we hope that when it comes to details, we will be better than the competition, but the general idea or the general solution is similar to that. And I believe that, as I said, Cardano is brand new, Plutus is brand new, so best practices and so on don't exist yet. But I do believe that there's a huge potential in this UTXO model that Cardano uses that can, in the end, make it much more scalable than Ethereum, for example. And you mentioned L2, so for example, Hydra state channels. I think the way we set it up, we don't rely on them, so it should also work without Hydra. But certainly once Hydra is available later this year, hopefully, the way we set it up, we can make use of that. So then we will gain the profit from the advantages that L2 Hydra offers, but we don't rely on it. But I think we are in a perfect position to make use of it once it's available.
And I think with the timing of the DEX as well, with the launch, it may line up with some of those solutions that are available, especially with the scaling of the blockchain at the moment as well. So it's probably a better time to launch, especially with activity that's going on. And the general user experience at the moment on SundaeSwap, a lot of people complain about how long it takes, days, for example, to do a particular swap. So I think launching later on when Cardano scales a little bit more and having those options, I think is a huge benefit for anyone that's jumping onto a DEX for the first time. I feel like that's a part of the strategy. Like you'd think you'd wait for these scaling options to actually be available so that user experience is as smooth as possible, as opposed to grinding through how the UX is right now.
I mean, Cardano's philosophy, we have often been criticized for being slow, but the Cardano's philosophy has always been to do things right. Rather take a bit longer and think about the right solution. And so I'm glad that at Genius Yield it works similarly. So we rather want to get it right and take our time and think about things first. And as you say, wait until the scaling solutions are available. Yes, I believe it's no use like scrambling to be first and then offering a horrible user experience.
Okay, there's always advantages of being first, because like if you are first or you move into the market as soon as possible, there's liquidity that is key for a DEX. People with ADA or whatever come on board and go, yes, that's right, I want the opportunities. They all rush forth and try and provide those liquidity pairs and make the DEX popular. So I think that's a first mover advantage, which is always really good. But
that's true.
User experience is the second thing. So sure, you have all the liquidity, but if that user experience is terrible, people are going to move it off. People are going to leave and probably have a really sour taste.
I should also add that I haven't mentioned that before, that this yield optimizer, the reason we do a DEX is because in order to optimize yield, there must be something to optimize. We must have yield in the first place. So we need something that produces yield, like our DEX. But obviously, in principle, we can use any DEX. So, the idea is also that the yield optimizer doesn't care whether it's our DEX or SundaeSwap or something. So, in principle, the yield optimization part, at least of Genius Yield, which is like the truly unique part, will profit anyway, no matter which DEX on Cardano will be successful. Because, in principle, if somebody wants to provide liquidity, it doesn't care whether it's on SundaeSwap or on Mother DEX or on our own DEX, as long as he gets yield. And of course, it also becomes easier for the yield optimizer to optimize if there are more options. The more DEXs are available, the more moves are available, basically, to optimize. So in that sense, we are actually glad when other DEXs are also successful on Cardano, because that only opens more opportunities for our optimizer to optimize.
Okay, wait a second. Something's changed here. So you're saying your platform can tap into any DEX and any liquidity pool across the network?
In principle. It's all just transactions, right?
Yeah.
Obviously the details, the formats may be different. So in the first version of the optimizer, we probably will only target our own DEX, where we are in control of the API, the API. How exactly you talk to the DEX. But in principle, there's no reason why you couldn't use other DEXs. And conceptually, they are all very similar. The details, of course, are different. But yeah, in principle, there's no reason why you couldn't also use other DEXs and do yield optimization across several DEXs. So that's certainly the goal, to do that once we know how to do it for our own DEX.
Wow. Okay. That's pretty interesting. All right. So in terms of funding the project, you guys have a ISPO that's on at the moment. So the ISPO, people can delegate to various pools and get the GENS token. So can we talk about the ISPO? What are the tokens for, and what are the actual benefits of actually having the tokens within the ecosystem?
There are several aspects. So we talked a lot about the yield optimizer. So one benefit would be that maybe you get access to special I mean, the yield optimizer is not one I mentioned before. Risk, for example, you can pick your risk. So the idea is more that it's like different strategies that you can pick. Maybe some riskier than others, but promising more yield, and using different strategies than others. So there are lots of ways. So one idea is that holders of the token get access to like more advanced of these strategies that maybe can offer even higher yield than the default ones. So that's one thing. Then we talked about the academy, and our idea is definitely to make it accessible for everyone for free. But nevertheless, the idea is also that holders of GENS tokens can get access to like special premium courses or something like special guest lectures by like interesting people. So that's something. Then, of course, Genius Yield will also earn fees. So I didn't mention that before. I mean, we talked about liquidity providers, how for each swap they get fees, and part of those fees will also like go to us, to Genius Yield. And then the token holders will get a share of those. So all the fees that Genius Yield makes when people swap will be distributed amongst the token holders. Did I forget? Oh yeah, governance. So at some point, we also want to have governance where people can vote about things like parameters or new directions or new features. And so that will then also be possible to eventually to use your GENS tokens to have influence on the future directions of the company and the platform.
So definitely a lot of utility in regards to holding the GENS token and earning it through the ISPO as well. So now with the ISPO, there's been a lot of questions with the length of time of the ISPO, how long you have to actually stake for, but then also how long in the future we'll actually get the GENS tokens. I think from the documentation, we don't actually get to see them until 2023. Why is there such a long period of time between staking now and actually getting our hands on the tokens?
The idea is, or what we want is that people basically do a long-term investment into Genius Yield and don't just use it for pump and dump actions, but basically like show their support and their belief in the platform. And if you compare it with, like, for example, us, the team, the Genius Yield team itself, we have like a vesting period of 3 years, I believe. So we can only like access our tokens in 3 years. And our investors from the first seed round, they have a vesting period of 2 years. So, which of course should like hopefully fill people with confidence in the project that, I mean, we are in there for the long run. So we don't just want to make a quick buck. I mean, we believe that in 3 years, it will thrive. And if you compare it with those periods, 2 years, 3 years, then of course half a year or 1 year for the people that participate in the ISPO is not that long a time. So we believe it's actually like a bonus that is relatively short in comparison to people like us.
Yeah. And when you put it in perspective like that, it kind of makes sense. So it's essentially a vesting period that you're putting everyone else into to actually help the DEX in general. And considering that you yourself have a 3-year vesting period, 6 months is nothing really. 6 months to a year for us is tiny. But you know, everyone's impatient. Everyone wants to get rich quick, sure. Right? That's the thing. But yeah, that's totally understandable in that respect. So there's also another benefit of staking and within the ISPO, and that's these NFTs that come into play. And I think when I saw that there was like a NFT aspect to it, I thought, oh, great, I better get in as quickly as possible and stake early. So I think I got in at the earliest time possible, and I'll have the Diamond Hands NFT. Can we talk a little bit about these NFTs, why they're in there? Are they purely there for rewarding users, or is there any utility behind it? Can we talk about that?
Maybe I will start from the beginning to explain a little bit more the whole mechanism of bonus rewards. So currently we offer NFTs as a part of our ISPO's bonus rewards program. And depending on the delegating criteria you meet, you will be eligible to claim one of the 6 categories of prizes, right? So, for example, if you delegated at least 500 data for over 30 epochs, you qualify to receive hodler prize. And within this hodler prize, you receive extra gens tokens, extra gens rewards. You get access to a round of public sale after the ISPO ends. And you get that hodler, in this case, hodler NFT. And currently, we, to be honest, we finalized the list of these utilities, because I can confirm that there will be, of course, some utilities, but still, we still work on it. So for now, I can just tell you that we listen to our community's feedback, to our community's voice very carefully. And I can encourage listeners of this podcast to simply follow Genius Yield social media channels, because this is where we're going to announce these details, these utilities, and we're going to announce it pretty soon.
I noticed recently on the social media channels these 3D models that have been released of various mathematicians or whatever it is. Is this a sneak peek into what the NFTs might look like?
Actually, this is I think I can already share this information with you. It was a sneak peek of our ambassadors program. So it might be that we'll turn that 3D models into NFTs as well.
Very cool. All right, I absolutely loved it. Like because of the time difference, you guys may have posted during the day, but I wake up to these little 3D animations in the morning here. I'm like, oh, wow, that's really cool. It's just those extra little perks, and I am definitely an NFT collector, so I love seeing those little aspects in regards to that coming into play. So it's a really nice little touch.
Great to hear that. Thanks.
So there's also another aspect around Genius Yield, or the ecosystem in general, and that comes with Genius X. Can we talk a little bit about that? I don't think anyone's really mentioned it at all, really. Can we learn a little bit more about what Genius X is and what your plans are for it?
Sure. So Genius X is actually our, I might say, unique accelerator program. And basically it provides the early stage blockchain startups with everything they need to get traction and to scale, right? So not only by connecting them to investors, but also by navigating them through the process of creating of a fundraising strategy, offering legal support, offering tax and audit services. And like, for example, we lately partnered with Grant Thornton as a well-known audit and consulting company. I think that it's Grant Thornton is mentioned sometimes as it's compared to the so-called Big Four. It's like Deloitte, PricewaterhouseCoopers, Ernst & Young, and KPMG. So we have Grant Thornton on board of our Genius X program. Legal support, tokenomics design, so on and so forth. So, and of course, the startups will be also integrated into the Genius Yield ecosystem. So yeah, this is basically the goal of the whole Genius X program.
That's fantastic. And I've heard that there's quite a few startups and being incubated at the moment. Are there any that you like to mention and highlight that are in the program at the moment?
Yeah, we do have first onboardings. We already welcomed Maestro, It's a Cardano stake pool provider that ensured that they unlock the potential of Cardano's initial stake pool offerings. We also onboarded Martify and CardaHub, and these are Cardano native NFT marketplaces. And also Legity, it's a startup that works on that develops a wealth management application and a service as such. And there are also, of course, new startups, new companies in our pipeline. So yeah, we'll be announcing it also pretty soon.
That's pretty exciting. I love the fact that you're not just building a DEX, you're building out various other ecosystems with the money and the funds that you're raising within Genius Yield. So that's really cool, because you're not just building up your own platform and your own thing, you're building up everything else that might be needed within the Cardano ecosystem in general. So that's really commendable and a really brilliant idea of what you could use and do with your funds that you raise as well.
Definitely. We want to participate. We want to support development of a Cardano ecosystem. Yeah.
So in regards to learning more about Genius Yield and everything that you do, what are the best channels to follow and where can people find out more information in general?
So if you'd like to know more about our project, read our news white paper, or if you're an SPO participant and you would like to check your current gens rewards balance, then of course you should go to geniusyield.co. And if you'd like to stay up to date with all updates, announcements, and so on, and the best way is simply to join our Telegram and Discord groups. We can also chat with us, with the Genius Yield team, and of course follow us on Twitter and our Medium blog. And of course all links to our all social media channels are also available on our webpage.
Okay, brilliant. For anyone that's listening, I'll put all those links in the description for the video and in the show notes as well, so everyone can find out exactly how they can learn more about Genius Yield and learn more about the project in general as well. Gentlemen, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you both about Genius Yield in general, learning about the DEX and also some of the plans that you have for the future of the Genius Yield platform and ecosystem. Thank you so much for joining me. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having us.
Thank you for inviting us.
Hopefully you enjoyed that interview with the team there from Genius Yield. They're doing some really amazing things. The automated yield optimizer with the AI. Yeah, that's a game changer, really. None of that stuff is available or possible on Ethereum because of its fees. The fees that you have to pay to actually make those things happen just don't happen. On the other hand, Cardano has deterministic fees, so you kind of know what you're paying and they're very cheap, they're very low. And because of that, you can have automatic yield optimizer, auto compounding, and all these other factors that AI can take advantage of and do swaps and trades for you. On Ethereum, that would cost you a fortune, but on Cardano, it is possible. It is really cool. So I'm looking forward to these projects launching and taking full advantage of that and making the Cardano ecosystem really flourish. So 2022 is going to be an absolutely amazing year. Okay, that's it for me for this podcast episode. If you really enjoyed this episode, please consider giving us that 5-star rating and review on the Apple iTunes store or anywhere that you're listening to this podcast episode. Really helps with the discoverability of the podcast. Helps other people in the Cardano ecosystem find it. So that is it for me for this podcast episode. So make sure you keep your seed phrases safe and secure and make sure you keep them backed up. Right. Bye.
Yeah, gotta do it like that. You've been listening to the Learn Cardano podcast. Gotta get it hype. Crypto is what we like, but this is not investment or financial advice. Gotta do your research, cause it's risky. We know it is. This show is educational and it's informative. Crypto's the future, really, it ain't no debating. IOHK, Emergo, we're not affiliated, not Cardano Foundation. We just gotta say it. A show that you can learn and it's for your entertainment. Yeah, you gotta check it don't wanna be missing that. You were tuned in to the Learn Cardano podcast. Yeah, giving insight. Ain't another show like this when it come to crypto. Invest at your own risk. Might not be for everyone, but who it is for, we keep giving you some info and plenty more. Hey, yeah, the Learn Cardano podcast. Hey, yeah, the Learn Cardano podcast. Thank you for tuning in. Keep it locked right here. Let's go.